when I had the presentations themselves, or the talks, let's say, about vegan feminism to like this big, it was a really mainstream feminist audience, like the people coming from very small towns as well,
Mm.
all over Poland, of different generations. I had like really good responses, surprisingly good responses. They were very open to the idea. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will go vegan overnight, but they were, you know, there was a lot of like people coming up to me afterwards and saying, "Wow, I never realized this, but it's so amazing. I have to sit and think about it." My name is Karolina Skowron-Baka. I'm a vegan feminist activist in Poland, and the author of the book Feminism is Veganism, which came out a month and a half ago in 2025, April 2025. So the cover is right here behind me. Yeah, and I've been part of the animal advocacy movement for about 20 years by now, and the feminist movement as well. Um, and right now I'm in, yeah, I guess that's it, probably. I
Yeah.
could go on about my professional life, but that's probably not relevant.
Well, it's up to you. Because the first question I was going to ask is, well, how did you come to focus on this intersection of gender and species?
So I can jump into that maybe. Um, so I've been involved in both the feminist and the animal advocacy movements for over 20 years now. And for a long time, I saw them basically as separate struggles, important to me personally, but not really related in my activism. So just one here, one there, not connected. And even though I'd find myself like surrounded by people, the same people in both spaces, it took me years to realize that these are deeply connected, that the causes themselves are deeply connected. And this came very gradually, I'd say. About 8 years ago, I began to notice like not just the similarities in how women and animals are treated, objectified, silenced, controlled, and so on, but also the structural and cultural overlaps and the oppression of both animals and women. And it really struck me also that the same institutions, the same political actors, often are the ones who oppose both feminist and animal rights agendas. So, oh, and also the perpetrators of violence against women and animals are often the very same people. Plus, the way that our culture uses women's bodies in advertising is something I began to explore as well, and how similar it is to the way it uses animals' bodies by being fragmented, sexualized, completely stripped of agency.
Mhm.
Um, so I realized there's no coincidence in that, that it's just not possible that there are so many coincidences. And I felt compelled to speak about it, speak about the connections. So basically, since then, for about 7, 8 years now, I've been working to build bridges between the feminist and animal advocacy movements, both globally by speaking at events like animal rights conferences and feminist conferences, but also, especially in Poland, I'd say, by speaking to feminist audiences here about vegan feminism. So I've worked like to introduce the conversation to some of the mainstream feminist organizations. And I've created some spaces for dialogue between the movements that previously were just completely like in isolation, even though some of the same people appeared here and there. But
Mm. Well, can you tell me a bit more about your efforts to build those bridges? How's that gone? And is it, um, well, I have a feeling it's going to be quite similar than it has from my experience in the US and even the UK, in Poland. Poland, I think, like the US, we've dealt with quite a lot of like some nationalistic kind of
mhm.
authoritarianism type of waves, if you will. So how's it been doing that kind of activism there? And what are your experiences with trying to build those bridges?
It's been hard, um, very hard to like find a space that will not be ignored completely.
Mm.
I did expect the backlash to be bigger, though. I was expecting a lot of feminists to be angry that I'm comparing them to animals, for instance, or that I'm speaking about rape culture in the context of in factory farming, for example. The backlash was much, much smaller than I expected from like the regular feminist activists. It was a bit bigger from the leaders. So, because I've been trying like to bring vegan feminism to the very heart of the feminist movement, not somewhere in the boundaries, but like to the biggest, most mainstream organizations. One of my first initiatives a few years back was to create the so-called Animal Center um, within the Congress of Women. And the Congress of Women is Poland's largest women's rights organization, or one of the two largest at this point, but back then it was the largest. And it organizes this big event. It's an annual event. It's like a 2-day gathering that brings together thousands and thousands of women from all over Poland. And the event is structured in a way where there's a main stage with some high-profile speakers and debates. And I also had a chance to speak about vegan feminism there for 5 minutes only, but still it was a big event. And then there are thematic centers. So when each of them is like focused on key issues within feminism in Poland. So it's like women in politics, for example, the gender pay gap, violence towards women, reproductive rights, so on, so on. And there's about up to 20 centers of sorts. And within the centers, there are like a number of debates that take place between 3 and 4 usually. And I successfully lobbied to include an animal center for the first time, which was focused entirely on animal rights and veganism. So it wasn't like animal rights in terms of cats and dogs, but very factory farming focused and very veganism focused. And actually, even though first the backlash from the leaders of the Congress was huge, they didn't want to do this at all. It
Mm.
took a lot of lobbying over and over again. I managed to convince them, and then I had to start all over again to convince them because they kept changing their minds. They thought it would be silly, um, that we would be laughed at, that the media would make fun of the whole event because of this. But finally, I managed to make them agree. And during the first year of the Animal Center, it had the largest audience of all the centers, which
Wow.
kind of, yeah, a lot of people came also from the animal advocacy movement. They kind of came because they were just loyal to the cause and happy that there was some space for it within the feminist movement, sorry. So that helped. And I could continue next year, which also had one of the largest audiences of all the centers. And then, following those 2 years of the Animal Center, I managed to secure a fully vegan catering for the entire event.
Whoa.
And this was the hardest to do. It was like a major shift in the Congress's history. There was a lot of backlash from the board mainly, who kept pushing back like until the very last day, even on the event itself when the vegan like catering was there. I kept finding cow milk, like dairy milk, in the space by the coffee machines. So I had to like between the debates that I was holding, that I was leading or speaking at, I went to this place where the catering was and took away all the milk and brought back the plant milk over and over again. So
Whoa.
yeah, but apart from this little milk incident, the whole catering was vegan. It was highly symbolic. The media talked about it a lot. So it was very important. I also introduced like this list of requests about animal rights in the Congress. They published it on their website. The vegan catering was there as well. So this was a major success, but the sad side is that it didn't last. So um, I did stop being active in this Congress for numerous reasons. I just didn't agree with some values concerning labor rights and other issues. And it didn't last when I was no longer involved. So they went back to the old catering. The animal center is not existent anymore. Um, the movement in Poland still remembers this initiative, and they're very proud of it as well. And then there was a second initiative that I think is worth mentioning. You may have heard of the women's strike. It's because it went very global, and there were a lot of like other countries which followed Poland's steps. Um, it's this very powerful, transformative feminist movement, like a grassroots movement that emerged in Poland a few years ago in response to the tightening of abortion laws. So huge protests, the biggest in our history, I think. And it's still like one of the most influential women's rights organizations in Poland. Um, and I can't say I was invited by the leaders of the women's strike, but by some people who are active there to conduct training with the leadership about vegan feminism, um, to help like the key organizers understand the analogies between the oppressions of women and animals. And I also, along with a colleague, co-authored and presented an official women's strike position on vegan feminism and animal rights. So we introduced this at like a national press conference, and it was part of this consultation group within the movement, because the movement at some point wanted to go beyond abortion rights, and wanted to become like more political, and they created these kind of, how do I explain this? Kind of consultation groups that were very grassroots around topics that people brought to the table. So some people brought animal rights to the table, but these animal rights were mainly focused on like cats and dogs. And the consultation group became slightly internally conflicted. And then a colleague who was there called me in, and we kind of shifted this to move to vegan feminism. So it was like the official organizational agenda during a national press conference, which was very important. Um, and probably one last thing I'd mention is kind of the other way around, so bringing feminism to the animal rights movement. So I founded the Polish chapter of Vegan Lady Boss. It's an American initiative mainly, but it's all over the world, or used to be. I think it's less popular now. And it's like this community, supportive community of women working for animals, no matter if they're activists or plant-based business owners, lawyers, politicians even. So we would all meet. And this was very popular because like all the most important animal activists and politicians and lawyers came. And we would like meet to share strategies, support each other, basically exchange knowledge and kind of build like a sisterhood, let's say, or collective strength of sorts.
Yeah, what is that called again?
Vegan Lady Boss.
Sounds vaguely familiar. I think, yeah, it was
There are
around.
groups all over the world. Let me type this. It's Vegan Lady Boss. This was just Vegan Lady Boss Poland. It's less popular now, I think.
Yeah,
Oh
they were
yeah,
having
and
big
of
conferences,
course,
weren't they?
sorry.
They were having big conferences for a while, weren't they?
Yeah, I think they were. It was really big in some countries. In Poland, it was just this one chapter,
Okay.
just in Warsaw in the capital. But
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna check that out in a bit. Ringing a bell.
and my book, obviously. I forgot to
Yeah. Well,
talk
let's
about
talk
my
about the
book.
book. Talk about the book. So that I was really annoyed actually when Monica told me about it. It's like, why do I don't know? Why do I not know about this book? Now I know why. It just came out.
It just came out and it's in Polish. You
Well, that
know.
also doesn't help me, but thankfully I have you here so you can explain what made you want to write the book and what's the tactic there? What's the strategy in the book?
hmm So, like following all these years of trying to connect these two movements, I never planned to write a book. I'm not a writer. I'm an activist. So, but I was convinced by a fellow writer and activist to write down everything I've been speaking about for years, just because there's no book at all in Poland on the issue. We do have Carol Adams translated, The Sexual Politics of Meat, but it's very recent as well. It's very niche. There's just like a few really people who actually know about this. It didn't become popular in Poland at all. So the issue is still like very, very young in Poland. And apart from the work that I've been doing, it's almost non-existent. So I was convinced by this friend, and I'm very happy he convinced me, just to write everything down to be able to reach like a larger audience, and go a little bit more mainstream than just the activists who were already interested, or the feminists that I was able to speak to during the events. So the book is titled Feminism is Veganism. And it basically it does a bit of what you're doing as well because it explores the issue in depth, like in theory. But I also have a lot of people that I've spoken to who are activists, their own experience as women and animal activists, for example. But I was also able to speak to people from environments like hunters and see what their yeah, I had an informer, and I was able to see like what this looks like behind the scenes and what their approach towards women specifically is as well. So I kind of chose like three environments that are very, very masculine, and very open about their violence towards animals, that they're proud of it actually, like they're treating it like a sport or a cultural factor. So corrida, is that how you say it in English? No, one second, let me Google this. Corrida in English. Um, yeah, it's called corrida as well. It's a fight between a bull and a man. in Spain,
Okay, that's
bullfighting.
probably why I don't know. I avoid all information about that, but go on.
So basically, bullfighting is a huge cultural phenomenon in Spain mainly. So I
Mm.
also explored how sexual violence rises incredibly during the days of the festival when there's bullfighting.
Really?
Yeah. Like 12% of all rape cases happen during those 3 days at the festival in this particular town where the festival is the biggest, for example. Yeah.
How'd you find that out?
From a Spanish activist, Spanish Polish activists. Yeah. I looked into hunters and their all-inclusive trips, which included the all-inclusive means choosing an animal to kill from a catalog, but also choosing a sex worker who will greet you at the accommodation. And this is called all-inclusive. It's very popular in Austria, but it also happens in Poland. And I managed to speak to the ex-wife of a fur farm owner.
Oh.
And she also told me behind the scenes how women are treated in this environment, because Poland is one of the biggest three fur producers in the world. So it's a huge thing here as well. That's basically that. So the strategy of the book is it's not academic at all. It's very like it's like an activist book, and feminists are my target audience. The book is very persuasive. I'm very open about this as well. During the first pages, I basically say, I want to make you angry. I want you to change your mind on some issues. This will not be a comfortable book. It will be a persuasive book, but I invite you to listen and make up your own mind about this and just see the interconnecting impressions and see what you make of it.
Mm.
But the main like goal of the book is to bring feminists on board with animal rights, basically.
Mm.
Um, and it is a bestseller already. After this month, it's a bestseller at the publishing house who has published it. So it has like sparked conversation, not just among activists, but in the broader public discourse a little bit. I'm still in the midst of promoting the book, so I'm like traveling around the country and having offers meetings, stuff like that. And slowly we're building a grassroots vegan feminist movement in Poland based on this.
Mm.
So I'm like creating local groups, collecting people now, signing up, and thinking of what our first like actions could be to push, vegan feminism into the mainstream of the feminist movement. Uh, so I'm hoping we can create like a lasting shift when we grow bigger. There's a lot of women who are already involved. We're like preparing artistic events, and a lot of women who haven't been vegan before have also joined. So that's really interesting. Yeah, but we're just at the beginning of building the movement, so I would be able to tell you more in a while. Right now,
Ah,
we're like counting ourselves, collecting, getting people to sign up, and kind of dividing them into cities.
this is really good to hear because usually, and maybe that's just the bias of the people that I've been interviewing, and a lot of them Americans, is that a lot of the times it is people who are doing the reverse, trying to inject feminism into the animal rights movement. But I haven't really seen, and gosh, I'm sure I'm overlooking stuff, but I haven't really seen a really sustained effort to infiltrate into the feminist spaces from the animal rights point of view, really since the 1980s and 90s, when I was looking at Feminists for Animal
Mm.
Rights that Marty Keel ran. That was like their main thing. They worked really, really hard to enter into mainstream women's conferences and write to women's magazines, feminist magazines.
What are
So
they
that is
called?
really, sorry,
What were they called?
Feminists for Animal Rights. And someone has archived all of their newsletters on a website.
Mm,
So it's all up there to
wow.
browse through. But
What's it called, the website?
uh,
Do you remember?
FARINC.org. But if you type in feminists for animal rights, it comes up on Google.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but they that was their main aim, is they were going
Mm,
to infiltrate feminism, then also the environmental movement. And one of the things I've
mm,
done for this book is I went through the archives because Marty Keel passed some years ago, and
mm.
she saved all of this correspondence. And you can see some of the really nasty, ugly emails or letters, rather, because this was the 80s and 90s, that she was getting from, say, representatives of the Green Party in the United States that were
Oh,
just so dismissive of her feminism and so dismissive of her um, well, it was veganism, but sometimes she would call it vegetarianism, and they were even hesitant to even make a stance against vivisection.
Really.
Yeah, it's but the vitriol behind their responses to her. That's why I was asking you, like, what was it like for you to be into those in those spaces? Sometimes I feel like that can be quite overwhelming. It's where I just don't
It
want
is like when you're fighting for it to even exist there. That's the difficult part, right? Especially with the leaders. But like when I had the presentations themselves or the talks, let's say, about vegan feminism to like this big, it was a really mainstream feminist audience, like the people coming from very small towns as well,
to.
all over Poland, of different generations. I had like really good responses, surprisingly good responses. They were very open to the idea. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will go vegan overnight, but they were, you know, there was a lot of like people coming up to me afterwards and saying, "Wow, I never realized this, but it's so amazing. I have to sit and think about it." Think about it. Um, I did not have like any big backlash at all. Right now with the book, what's surprising is that there's like a fan club of sorts. So there's the people who are extremely enthusiastic about it, excited, so on, so on. And then there are some of the mainstream feminists who haven't said a word. So they are not against, they're not saying anything against it. They're also not saying anything for it. I know they know about the book. Some of them have received the book from the publishing house. They know me. I mean, we've known each other for years. So, but they
Oh,
haven't said a word publicly about the book at all, or to me. So it's like a different strategy for them, I think, of silence.
right. That's the biggest power flex is that you don't even need to respond to this, I guess,
Yeah.
this perspective. Well, that's
There's
all.
a good side to it because a few years back, a lot of them would be against. So maybe it's like a bit of a, um, maybe today you shouldn't be against things like this. Maybe it doesn't look good to be against, but saying nothing is also like a way of diminishing
Yeah, of course.
or
Yeah.
trying to ignore.
So I wonder now if, because even with ecofeminism, it had a tough time and perhaps still does to an extent getting acknowledgement in feminist spaces. But I wonder now, after 40 plus years of ecofeminists pushing to get access, we've had 40 plus years of climate crisis worsening, where now it is when, I mean, when I was a university student, it was hardly ever talked about in the media. I remember we had a special guest lecturer come in to our class, our political science class, to tell us about climate change. And I remember thinking, like, is it not that obvious that we have climate change? And it's true. But now, 20 some years later, it's the BBC, like almost every night they make some kind of comment on environmental issues and climate change issues. So I wonder if that's kind of forcing feminism now to start to, like you said, if not disparage, then at least not say anything. Does your book
I
talk
think
about
so.
climate? Does it use climate change as a framework at all, or is it just looking at
It's
one?
just in one particular space, because I dedicated one chapter or part of one chapter to like the excuses usually used by human rights activists and feminist activists to not go vegan.
Mm,
Um, Also because I'm also an activist of like the environmental climate movement, let's say. So I've heard so many excuses over the years of people saying things like that veganism is not pro-climate because of avocado or because vegan products are packed in plastic, things like that. So I've heard so many of those that I just grouped them together. I divided them into like five groups of arguments, let's say. Arguments, actually excuses, not arguments. And I kind of break them down. So I do talk about like climate change and
okay.
how factory farming influences it. But it's more towards the end of the book because also the strategy is to like begin with issues that um, all of my readers can agree with. So everybody is against fur farms. Everybody is against farmers, right? Everybody is against like the violence that's very visible, open, kind of direct. Everybody is against domestic violence. So I also show like the link, right? And how abuse towards women and animals goes hand in hand
Mm,
in terms of domestic violence. So I'm kind of working to like bring the readers, the feminists, on board with one issue after another. That's easy for them to take on.
yeah.
And then towards the end, I talk more about the things that are uncomfortable to them,
Mm.
saying that like feminists should not be drinking dairy milk, explaining why.
I mean,
But
And that one, it just seems so straightforward. But yeah, I think it was so telling that the caterers kept bringing back in the milk for whatever reason. Is it just because they couldn't get their head around it, or if they were just trying to
I'm
sabotage?
actually, I actually think, I suspect that the leaders of this organization asked them to do it. I'm actually quite sure of that because everything pointed to it.
That,
So
that really, I found it so, it's so,
get me some normal milk here.
yeah, well, it's also extremely childish. It's like literally childish. You're an
Yeah.
adult, you don't need milk, and like it's plant milk is not going to taste any different to where your coffee's ruined. But anyway, so we've talked about quite a lot of interesting strategies and things that are unique to Poland. I've learned quite a lot about the scene in Poland. That's been really great. And I think now, like, and this book is going to be, it's already creating this new change, which is super exciting. So yeah, please do check back in with me. And do you have a Facebook page for this or social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Okay, so I can follow
I do
that.
have a social, yeah, I have one on Facebook as well, but it's very small. I just set it up recently.
Okay,
But the
yeah.
Instagram one
Let's
is a
be
little
able
bit
to
bigger.
keep track, even if
Sure.
there's just pictures. If it's in Polish, I can see pictures. Well, anyway, so this is a sort of legacy in the making, I suppose, and that was going to be my final question to you. You've had so many projects you've been doing and so many goals, and a lot of big changes have already happened, and you've still got a lot to do, right? You're
Oh yeah.
just getting started. So this is kind of a fun question to ask younger people, but like where do you see yourself looking back 60, 70, 80 years old? What do you think your legacy is going to be? Or what do you want it to be?
Hmm. Wow, big question. Um, I'm hoping the next wave of feminism will be vegan. That's my biggest hope. My dream and my goal as well. So like I'm hoping that veganism will be in the very mainstream of the feminist movement in Poland. That animal rights will be like one of the most important requests of the feminist movement because they will completely understand that it's impossible to achieve the goals of feminism without doing this as well. Because it's just rooted in the same patriarchal anthropocentric worldview. Depression, I mean, towards animals and women. So I'm hoping that like the animal rights movement and the feminist movement will share the same vision by that time. Um, it's not looking good at the moment. We just had our presidential elections yesterday, and we woke up to a world of Trump in Poland,
Oh,
basically.
no. Oh, I haven't watched the news yet. That's not great. I guess I'll turn on the news after this. Yeah, I haven't watched the news yet today or yesterday. Okay, well, I like that, and I think it's fully possible. Climate change is also, I think that's the other thing. I'm 100% in this for animals, seeing them as persons in their own right. But I'm becoming more and more swayed by thinking that climate change is what's going to force people to start paying attention and open up to the idea that
That's
animals.
possible, yeah.
So I think in the next 20 years or so, there's going to be a reckoning. There has to be. But you never know. I woke up to the Vegan Society sent a newsletter this morning saying that the UK food strategy, because they're doing a whole revamp of the government food strategy, and there was hardly any independent people on the board. There was factory farmers on the board, there's industry
Oh,
people on the
good.
board, and
Hmm.
it's like it's going to take real catastrophe here in the UK with climate change for people to actually give that shit up, basically.